My name is Ariella. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. My husband, Everett, and I were friends from college, and we started dating after a reunion and eventually got married. Even now, after 3 years, we get along so well that we often go out together on weekends. One day, as I was about to leave work and return home, I received a call from my husband. "It seems my mom fell and went to the hospital, so I'm going to check on her." "What? Is she okay?" I headed straight to the hospital. Since my in-laws live nearby, the hospital they usually go to is also close by. When I arrived at the hospital, my husband was already there. "Ariella, you've come to see me?" As I peered into the hospital room, my mother-in-law smiled happily at me. But she had bandages on and it looked painful. I heard that she has a sprained ankle and a cracked wrist. Even though she has a job, she'll probably have to take some time off. "I'll focus on treatment for now." She said that with a smile, and my husband and I felt relieved. Then, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. "I heard you fell, Mom." I thought they were worried, but I couldn't believe what I heard next. "What the heck were you doing? Did you take a bus here? Huh? A taxi? Why did you waste money like that?" His wife chimed in. "When can you go back to work? And what about the house chores? Who do you think will take care of all that in place of you?" My brother-in-law and his wife have a grade school-aged son and live with my mother-in-law. According to my husband, because they wanted to save money for buying their own home in the future. They moved in with her in a rather intrusive manner, saying that it must be lonely for her to live in such a big house alone. My mother-in-law works until the evening, and when she comes home, she cooks meals for my brother-in-law's family and takes care of most of the housework. She even looks after their grade school-aged son. She has a naturally caring personality and can't leave people in need, so it seems this situation is unavoidable for her. However, my husband says that we shouldn't stick our nose into it, because we don't know anything like living expenses and such. Still, it infuriates me to see my mother-in-law being talked to like this. I couldn't help but speak out. "Isn't that a bit rude?" In response, my brother-in-law's wife glared at me fiercely. "What would you know? You don't even have kids. It's already tough enough taking care of children, and now I have to take care of my mother-in-law too." I wanted to argue back, but my mother-in-law immediately stopped me. "Thank you for coming today, Ariella. Everett, go and have something delicious to eat." Saying that, she took out a $100 bill from her wallet and handed it to my husband. My brother-in-law's family glared at us as they saw that, but we pretended not to notice and quickly left the hospital room. We went to a restaurant for a meal on our way home. "It seems like my brother is getting influenced by his wife," my husband murmured, looking a bit disappointed. I had that my brother-in-law has had a personality that gets easily swayed by other people. His wife must have become interested in him because he works at a big company and he has a good income. They got married because she made an aggressive move on him. From then on, my brother-in-law's personality gradually changed. My husband didn't like his brother's wife from the beginning and became distant, so he only heard later from my mother-in-law that they were living together. "I wonder if your mother is okay," I said to my husband because I was concerned about the attitude of my brother-in-law and his wife earlier. He said that he wanted to visit his mother's home more frequently for a while, so I agreed. The next day, my mother-in-law was scheduled to be discharged after her examination, so my husband and I drove to the hospital. My brother-in-law didn't have a car, so I thought we could give him a ride, but we were met with an unexpected situation. When we entered the hospital room, my mother-in-law was getting ready to leave. However, she seemed to be having a hard time with her hands and feet. After I greeted her, I helped her. "Where is Grady?" Naturally, we expected his brother to be here to pick her up, but when my husband asked my mother-in-law, she sadly replied, "He's busy, so he can't come. He told me to take the bus back." My husband and I exchanged glances. Neither of them can come to pick her up in this situation? If that's the case, at least they should have asked us to pick her up. And they told her to take the bus home. It's already difficult for her to walk, and she has luggage too. I'm sure my husband and I were both thinking the same thing. Even I am getting really angry, so my husband must be even more furious, because his own mother was being treated like that. However, my mother-in-law said, "Don't be angry with them. I'll be fine." When we drove my mother-in-law home, there was no one at their house. My husband supported his mother, and I carried the luggage, but the inside of the house was in a terrible state. There were piles of unwashed laundry and dirty dishes. My mother-in-law was hospitalized for only 1 day, so what on earth happened here? "I'm responsible for the housework, so there's no choice," my mother-in-law said, trying to start tidying up, but we quickly stopped her. Seeing a mess worse than we expected, my husband secretly consulted with me. "Can we let my mom stay with us for a while?" he asked. I nodded enthusiastically, and he made the proposal to his mother. But she smiled and said, "Thank you. But you know, I don't want to leave this house where I spent time with your father. We have so many memories together." With her words, we couldn't insist any further. When my brother-in-law returned later, my husband confronted him. "Until mom's injury heals, don't make her do any housework. If you have any problems, let us know, and we'll help." Saying that, we left my in-laws' home. Every few days, we visit my in-laws' house. Perhaps my husband's visit had an effect, as the house is not messy. That day, I had a day off from work, so I bought some gifts, and visited my in-laws alone. There was no one else in the house except my mother-in-law. My brother-in-law's wife had left without telling my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law had no idea where my brother-in-law's wife was. While we were talking, my mother-in-law started to do the laundry, so I hurriedly stopped her and helped her. "You shouldn't do this now, it will worsen your condition." "But you see, I'm taking a time off from work, so at least I should do some housework." I gently guided my mother-in-law to sit down and brought out the tiramisu I bought as a gift. "I really like this. I bought it for you to try, so please let me know what you think." I pushed the tiramisu onto her, and she thanked me, and finally took a rest. In the meantime, I started to take care of the laundry. She might not like someone like me touching her laundry, but there's no time for that. While I was doing that, I heard noise from the entrance. My brother-in-law's wife has come home. "You're here again?" As soon as she entered the room, she glanced at me and said that. When she saw my gift, her eyes sparkled. "That's the tiramisu from the famous restaurant, isn't it?" She snatched the tiramisu, still in the bag, from in front of my mother-in-law. Ignoring my attempts to stop her, she started getting the tiramisu out of the bag. "It's a gift, right? Then it should be okay if I have some," she said. Of course, I bought enough for my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family, but it annoyed me that she didn't even say thank you, and just took it without permission. I got fed up with everything and finally spoke up. Can you do some housework, please? It's not right that our mother-in-law who is injured is doing the housework, don't you think? What do you know? I'm working part-time and taking care of the kids, so I'm busy. Besides, our mother-in-law isn't working and lives here, so she should do the housework, right? I retorted to her excuse. She is not working because she is injured, so it can't be helped, can it? If you make her overexert herself now, her injuries won't heal. Who do you think you are? Why would I have to take care of my mother-in-law? There was no condition to take care of her when we got married. If she's broke and can't work, she should leave. I couldn't hold back my anger anymore and snatched the tiramisu from her. Susan, let me pack your things. My mother-in-law was surprised, but my momentum couldn't be stopped. I packed her belongings into a suitcase, ignoring my brother-in-law's wife who was trying to follow me to take back the tiramisu. She is going to live with us. We'll come back to get whatever she needs later. Saying that, I put my mother-in-law in the car and returned home. Since I have decided on my own, I sent an email to my husband explaining what had happened. I made my mother-in-law sit down and I said this to make it clear to her. Susan, I don't like it when someone else touches the things in my house. So please don't do any cleaning, laundry, or cooking, okay? My mother-in-law has been in shock, but perhaps she has finally calmed down. She thanked me, almost on the verge of tears. Just then, my husband came home from work. Ariella! I'm sorry, what happened? Hastily entering the room, my husband looked puzzled. I tried to explain, but my mother-in-law explained it for me. I'm sorry, Everett. Ariella was worried about me and brought me here. My husband called my brother-in-law. Apparently, my brother-in-law's wife told my brother-in-law like this. Ariella and your mother bullied me, and your mother left on her own. She's still playing the victim at this point. But my brother-in-law also seems rather gullible to believe her so easily. It seemed that my brother-in-law was blaming my husband, but my husband retorted. Your wife has been making Mom do the housework, hasn't she? And it seems that she said some pretty awful things to Mom, too. You should have a proper discussion with your wife. Saying that, my husband hung up the phone. Then, my mother-in-law started talking little by little. They suddenly said that they wanted to live with me because they were worried about me being alone. I refused, but they moved in anyway, and told me that if I didn't want to live with them, I should rent an apartment for myself. My daughter-in-law said if I didn't live with them, they'd get divorced, and I felt bad for your brother. In the end, the housework was my job, and no one was home when their kids came home, so I had to take care of them, but they haven't even paid for the living expenses. Neither my husband nor I knew that something like that was happening, and we exchanged glances. My brother-in-law seems to believe that his wife and my mother-in-law shared the household chores equally. Also, apparently his wife lies that she is going to work, but in reality she goes out to have fun on her days off. My mother-in-law said that she couldn't bring herself to tell anyone about this either. Actually, my brother-in-law was a victim of marriage fraud in the past, and my mother-in-law is worried that he won't recover if they get divorced. She feels sorry for him, which is why she couldn't say anything. My husband also has a complicated expression. That's understandable. But for now, the priority is my mother-in-law's recovery, so we decided to set aside the topic about her living with my brother-in-law's family for the time being. From that day on, I made meals in advance, came home without working overtime, and made efforts to make things easier for my mother-in-law. Thanks to that, when she went for a checkup, she was told that her recovery was going well. When she returned from the hospital, she handed an envelope to my husband and me. When my husband checked the contents, there was a bundle of $100 bills inside. Here's $8,000 for living expenses, she said. What? We both exclaimed in surprise. What's this $8,000 for? Why is she trying to give us such a big amount of money? We vigorously shook our heads. Mom, you don't need to pay for living expenses. That's right. Besides, we can't accept such a large amount of money. Saying that, my mother-in-law teared up. When Ariella took me out of that house and brought me here, I felt so relieved. I couldn't imagine leaving the house full of memories with your father, but after being apart from it, I became convinced that memories wouldn't disappear even if I wasn't there. Living with my brother-in-law and his family must have been tough. As for the $8,000, my mother-in-law has real estate and receives rent every month. She stopped by the bank when she went to the hospital and withdrew a nice round number. My husband was also surprised because he didn't know she was earning so much. My mother-in-law smiled and said, "Moreover, both of you have taken such good care of me, and since I came here, I've been able to relax a lot. Today, the doctor said that the recovery is going well, so after I recover, I'll sell that house and look for a condo." Hearing these unexpected words, my husband and I exchanged glances. I was a fool for spoiling them. The grandchildren are cute, but they don't listen to what I say. Their parents don't act like parents, and they don't even contribute to the living expenses. So, this is my way of thanking you. Please accept it. My husband replied, "Then I'll accept it. I'll use this for Ariella, who worked hard this time." My mother-in-law nodded. After that, we decided to have a discussion with my brother-in-law and his wife, so we visited the family home together with my mother-in-law. As expected, the room was in a complete mess. There was garbage such as packages of instant food and frozen food on the floor, and it was clear that my brother-in-law's wife doesn't do any housework. With a sigh, my husband brought up the topic. "Mom is going to sell this house, so you guys have to find a new place and move out." Then, it was my brother-in-law's wife who strongly opposed. "What are you saying? In that case, you are going to pay for the moving expenses and rent, right?" She came up with another unreasonable demand. I, as an outsider, thought I should stay quiet, but upon hearing that, I couldn't help but speak out reflexively. "There's no way we can afford that. Instead, you should pay the living expenses to my mother-in-law." Since they started living with my mother-in-law, they haven't paid any living expenses, and my mother-in-law has been supporting my brother's family with her own earnings and the money she made from stocks. When I said that, my brother-in-law seemed puzzled. "Didn't I tell you to withdraw money from my account and give it to Mom?" His wife turned pale when he asked her, and everyone in the room looked at her. I really didn't like her, and I broke the silence. "Did you embezzle the living expenses that you were asked to give to our mother-in-law?" Her face turned even paler. I asked her more questions. "I heard you spent your days off having fun. So, did you use the living expenses that you were supposed to give to our mother-in-law as your allowance? I hope I'm wrong, but did you tell your husband that you were going to work on your days off, and you actually went out to have fun?" Perhaps because it was the truth, she became so angry at me. "What do you know? I work part-time, take care of the kids, and do the housework." "I don't know, and I don't even want to know, but at least I know that you work only a few hours a week, and our mother-in-law takes care of your children and does most of the house chores, right? So how is it difficult for you? Our mother-in-law is the one who is having a hard time." It seems that my brother-in-law had never doubted his wife and was completely unaware of what was happening. My brother-in-law's wife had taken advantage of our mother-in-law who didn't say anything, and she had done as she pleased, but now her actions were finally exposed. My husband couldn't stand it and spoke up. "Grady, it's also your fault because you didn't notice anything at all." My mother-in-law had a complicated expression. My brother-in-law was angry with his wife, but he seemed to have realized something when he heard my husband's words. My brother-in-law apologized to my mother-in-law and us, saying, "I was wrong. I'm really sorry." Afterward, my brother-in-law's wife caused a big fight with her husband and returned to her parents' home. However, when her parents found out about the embezzlement, they were furious. They promised to make her pay back the living expenses that she embezzled, and she is now working day and night in her hometown. My brother-in-law seemed to have had an awakening from this incident, and he moved out of the family home and started living with his son alone. He still seeks help from my mother-in-law at times, but he's doing his best with housework and parenting. My mother-in-law has fully recovered from her injury. She decided not to sell the house, and she is still living in the family home filled with memories. With the money that my mother-in-law gave us as living expenses, my husband and I have planned a long-awaited trip to a place where I've always wanted to visit. I'm looking forward to it now.